Hello, everyone, and welcome to A New Direction. My name's Jay Izzo, and oh man, do we have another great show for you today. Absolutely fabulous show. The book today is Story Business. Fabulous book. Why Stories Rule the World and How They Can Reinvent Your Business is the secondary title. Gavin McMahon is the author of the book. Absolutely fabulous book. This is going to be a book that's going to challenge you. If you're a business owner, if you're a business entrepreneur, which I have a lot of you listening, if you're a salesperson, if I don't care if it's selling product services, I don't care what it is. This book's going to challenge you because it's going to force you to get out of your narrower mindset when it comes to marketing and doing what you do. And it's going to force you to rethink and reinvent the way you're thinking about how you're going about pitching, selling, dare I say, persuading people to purchase product, how to get buy-in in culture, what you need to be as a leader, what's the stories that you got to tell. And there's a lot more here that we need to do to dig into. Unfortunately, Gavin McMahon is with us. And we're going to really, I need you to be open-minded, okay? Would you work with me on that? Be open-minded. I need you to have an open mindset, right? Because it's not going to be the way you've always thought about it. It's not. It's different. And different is good, because if we continue doing the same things we've always done, hoping for a different result, we all know what that is. It's insanity. So why don't we get out of insanity and let's look at something differently. And this is what Gavin McMahon presents with us today. And I would love, if I could, I would love to introduce you to him. Gavin McMahon is co-founder and CEO of Fast Forward. I said fast, not fast, fast, F-A-S-S, forward, F-O-R-W-A-R-D.com, a leadership and storytelling consultancy, an engineer by training and storyteller at heart. Talks a lot about his grandmother, I think, as I recall reading in the book. She told stories. His mom was a storyteller too as well. He spent over 30 years helping leaders turn strategy into action across industries. Things like technology, defense, finance. Former British Army officer. Thank you for your service, by the way, Gavin. And Royal Academy of Engineering fellow. He believes great ideas need great stories and has made a career helping leaders tell them. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show. Welcome to the first time ever, Gavin McMahon. Gavin, welcome to A New Direction.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. And can I say, what an introduction?
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. At least the first part's gone well.
Best one today. No, I'm just kidding.
So at least that's gone well. So let's see how we create the story from here. That's just the introduction to the story. We got a beginning, middle, and end we got to do here too yet, right? So
yeah, let's follow that.
Let's see how we do with the rest of it. I'm gonna bypass the first couple of chapters. I want to jump into story, and I was gonna, you and I talked before the show. I was gonna do chapter 3, but I think maybe it might be better if we define story and then go back into chapter 3, into synapse and story. Because maybe if people get an idea, when we're talking about business and story, we're not talking about a Hollywood movie when we're doing that. It's something very different. So maybe let's start there and just kind of get people's mind thinking in a particular direction. When we say story from your point of view.
Yeah, there's a reason I always put story and business together. This book is, I think if a Hollywood screenwriter picked this book up and read it, they'd be horrified by the way I define story. And I define it in a very, very simple way. I think a story is a piece of information wrapped in emotion. That's it. And the reason I think the information and emotion go together, another writer, Jonathan Gottschall, talked about, and it's a quote I love, it's in the book. He talked about a story is a trick for sneaking into the fortified citadel of the human mind, which is a bit of a mouthful, but it is absolutely true. And I think that's what story is to me. It's a very elastic definition. It means that I can kind of apply it to anything. But that trick for sneaking into the human mind, that's important. And that's why you need the emotional wrapper around a piece of information.
Mhm.
If I connect story to telling, to me, the telling or the act of telling is I want to do two things. I want to frame the way you see the world, because if you and I see the world the same way, everything gets much easier from there. If you and I see things completely differently, we have a hard time with pretty much anything we want to do. So I want to frame the way you see the world, and so we're framing it in the same way. And then I want to move people to action, because I think it's story business, it's commerce, it's about, putting your words in a commercially rewarding order. And that is important. If you can't do that, then why are you doing it? So I think this idea of story business is a piece of information wrapped in emotion. Storytelling is I need to frame the way you see the world, and I need to move you to action. And I'm doing that for commercial purposes.
Okay, so that's a perfect segue actually, because when I go back to chapter 3 and I talk about synapse and story, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you say the universe is made up of stories, and
Yeah.
our brains run on the narrative network,
Yeah.
and you talk about something. My master's doctoral work is in psychology, so when you talk about self-referential processing, right, is that you're correct. We do try to place ourselves somewhere in this. How do I fit in, right? I'm trying to connect my own life to whatever, if I'm being sold something, I'm trying to connect, is that going to work for me?
Yeah.
Right, on some
Yeah.
level. So you talk about we shortcut and satisfies the decision-making process. And I want to kind of move into that a little bit. When you say that, what do you mean we shortcut it and satisfies the decision-making process?
Well, I'm connecting a lot of ideas together. Full disclosure, I am not a psychologist. I'm an engineer. So I think that makes me want to figure out roughly how things work. And then as long as it works, I'm okay. I don't really need to know the science behind it. But I think it's a couple of different things. I think, well, first of all, let's go all the way back to that. The universe is made up of atoms, not stories. That I wish I'd written that line. I didn't. I just quoted it. It's a poet, Muriel Rukeyser. But I think it's true. I mean, as an engineer growing up, I had this very literal view of the world where, 1 + 1 = 2. If we get part A and part B and connect it together, that's going to make something work. And that roots my worldview in this idea that everything is a meritocracy. I just need to do the right thing. I need to work hard. All these A + B + C = D. And the fact is, once people get involved, it never works like that. And so if there's a root to the book, it's really this idea that it's never the best idea that wins. It's the best packaged idea. And that's where storytelling really comes in. So what I discovered actually from reading a lot of stuff from psychologists and neuroscientists is a line, I think, from Federica Fabricius, who's a neuroscientist, and she talked about this idea that the brain has a narrative network. So it's what you talked about, the self-referential thinking, the fact that whatever whatever we're talking about now, people are listening are thinking, what's this got to do with me? That's your kind of daydreaming state, the way you are when you're not focused. And then so I've got this kind of okay, so stories are a way for sneaking into that fortified citadel of the human mind. We're tapping into this narrative network. We're tapping into the fact that it's all about you. Okay, I get all of that. But why are we doing that? And this is where it connects to business, because I think fundamentally, every business is the same. It doesn't matter whether you're a big business or a small business. It doesn't matter where you're in fintech, whether you're in technology, whether you're in finance, whether you're in insurance. All our clients, they all do the same thing, and it boils down to two words. They sell stuff. Now, the stuff, what the stuff is changes all the time. One year it's cloud, the next year it's AI. I'm selling insurance. I'm selling what you're selling and how you sell it change. That's where McKinsey comes in, because they'll explain those two words for your industry. But that's the commercial bit. Now, if you're selling stuff, what you're doing is you've got a whole group of people that somehow are getting together to create value. So if I have 100 people working for me, I want all those 100 people working together, making good decisions, because somehow those decisions come together and create value. If I have 1,000 people, same thing. If I have 50,000 people, same thing. The more I can line them up to make good decisions, the more they, the big decisions, the small decisions, this is the strategic direction. We're going to go all in on AI, or the small decision that means the person in a call center just has a rough day and is a bit snappy with a customer. Those are all decisions. Storytelling is the way that shapes the people that are in your organization and gets them to make better decisions. Because if I just tell them, it just washes over people. And we got to remember we're dealing with people, which takes me all the way back to the universe is made up of stories, not atoms.
Mm. And I think this is important about the story piece in this chapter. And you have a subtitle in this chapter called Reason, Emotion, and Decision.
Yeah.
And this is really critical in the story part of it, because I do think, however we define, however short it is, because you do say that, a story could be an anecdote. It doesn't have to be a long drawn out thing. It could be something simple. But here's, and I think this comes from Daniel Kahn, within Reason, Rationality, and Human Behavior, is emotion leads to action, reason leads to conclusions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Help us understand that a little bit more, because I think from a business standpoint, we don't really understand that emotion leads to action, reason leads to conclusion. People want to believe, we want to believe as human beings that we are rational human beings, that we make our decisions logically, but we don't. And I think this is crucial, I believe, to what you're saying.
Yeah, I think I came across his work years ago, and I read about Kahn. Basically, he was researching Alzheimer's, and he stuck people in an MRI machine and showed them pictures. And depending on the kind of picture he showed them, different centers of the brain lit up. And so when it was a very emotional kind of picture, a woman holding a child or someone being shot or something, certain parts of your brain lit up. When it was a very clinical picture, a reasoned picture, different parts of the brain lit up. And you also know that, I think, instinctively. If you have an argument with your significant other, I mean, here's the test, right? Reason leads to judgment, emotion leads to action. Now, the emotion, if you have an argument with your significant other, the emotion might be you get something thrown at you because that's an action because the argument got emotional. If you try and have a reasoned argument with someone, you get a very judgmental, person on the other end of that. And I think that, unfortunately, is the default setting. We somehow go into business, and there's a couple of things that I think, I don't know, it is kind of taught in business school, but everyone picks this up once they work in business. They think they have to, use really big words when they don't need to, and B, everything is rational. And I think that's one of the things I again picked up from all sorts of people, but O'Reilly, predictably irrational, is a good one. Humans love to think we are very rational, but we're just great rationalizers. So we make a decision, and then we rationalize it after the fact, which gets into one of the tools I talk about in the book, which is what I call the motive triangle. It's this idea of hope, fear, and reason. You need all three.
Yeah, let's dig into that a little bit. That we need these three, the motive triangle, because this is really important.
Yeah. Well, we were doing some work with a big client. So it's a very large, it's a company that basically, if you look at your credit cards, it's one of those companies that supplies your credit cards. And the guy that was running North America was saying, we want to make this change in the business, but we really can't get people to sign up for this change because, we're doing quite nicely, thank you. And there's no burning platform. And that stuck with me for a long time, because you can have this rational argument. You can have this PowerPoint deck of 100 slides that you get from McKinsey or BCG that say, this is the direction that we need to go in, and this is where the business needs to go. But effectively, no one's going to do it. And why are they not going to do it? Because you've just given them a reasoned argument. It's reason leads to judgment. Emotion leads to action. So if you think about most things that you talk about with your boss, with your colleagues, with whoever else, you're not generally tapping into hope and fear. And I think you need all three. The reason I describe it as a triangle is you need a rational argument. You need a reason to buy something. You need a reason to go in this direction strategically. You need a reason to do whatever it is you're trying to get the organization to do. But you need hope and fear, because hope and fear are where people really make the decision. Hope that this is going to be a better tomorrow. This is going to be some holy grail that we're getting into. Fear that I'm going to get left behind. It's not going to work. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons everyone and their brother and their sister and their mother is into AI right now. It's, I'm going to get left behind. I don't understand what it is. The A, I think, is artificial. I might be intelligence. I'm not sure, but they're all doing it, and they're all doing it because not for a rational I mean, they're rationalizing after the fact,
right?
But if you could open up their brains, it's hope and fear.
I agree with you, and strongly, by the way, because anything that we may sell, I don't care what it is, even if it's an idea, right? First, it has to give me some sort of sense of hope that you know what, this is going to solve my problem. I'm hopeful this will solve my problem. But we also operate, and this is going to sound funny, but we also operate from an avoidance behavioral standpoint. We call it in psychology negative reinforcement, meaning that we're trying to escape something that is either harmful or annoying, or we're trying to get away from it. So that's in that sense, it's fear, because if we stay into that fear too long, we will become learned helplessness is what happens over time if we just stay there. So having those two things, which are diametrically opposed, really, hope and fear, becomes critical to getting us to move to action, but then allows us the ability to have the reason, even though it was an emotional action, to have the reasoning to go, well, that was the most logical decision.
Yeah.
right. That's what it really comes down to.
Yeah, 100%. I think the hope and fear piece generally never gets discussed, but it's going on in people's heads. It's like if you're making let's say you're making a purchasing decision. There's an old adage. I don't know if it's any longer true, but you'll never get fired for buying IBM. It's that ages me a lot if I say that. But that used to be true. And there's probably you won't get fired if you go with OpenAI or something now, or you go with Google. So, but that's really a hope and fear kind of decision.
Right.
I used to work at Gartner. Gartner built its business on, they called it FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. I mean, you don't sell newspapers, you don't sell research reports, you don't sell consulting if somebody isn't animated, and it's the animating factor is hope and fear. But I don't think in boardrooms, in one-on-one conversations, those things aren't discussed. What's shared is, I've made this decision, and here's the rationale for this decision, which is why you need all three. You need hope and fear to actually move the person, and then you need the rationale because that person needs to explain their decision to somebody else.
And here's what I think is so genius about this motive triangle that you've presented in this way. First of all, it's elegantly simple. It's really not hard. But what's genius about it is it can apply to anything that we're trying to get people to move to do. I don't care if you're trying to get your people to, buy into the culture, as we'll talk about a little bit later. You're trying to get them to purchase the product or the service, whatever it may be. If you're missing one of those elements, you have to have all of those elements be there. And we typically don't. Sometimes we lean so heavy on the fear element that we forget the hope element. Sometimes we lean so heavily on the hope element that we forget the fear element. And then we don't let it set long enough for people to believe that they've made a rational decision.
Yeah. Yeah. I think fear will make someone move quickly.
Right.
Hope will allow someone to endure,
Mm.
and reason will allow them to explain it to somebody else. And you need all three.
Right. Because then reason becomes why I'm referring you to somebody else, right? Because if I right, because then it becomes a referral. If I've made that come to that conclusion, now I'm going to recommend the plumber that I used to my neighbor.
Yeah. Well, you run a coaching practice, right?
Yeah,
And you
right.
and you coach all sorts of different executives, I assume, and they will, when you get referrals, they're giving that person a rational argument as to why you should go with Coach Jay.
Right.
But that's not the reason they're doing it. The reason they do it is they somehow you've made them better, and you have quelled the things, the villains, the monsters that are chasing them, the fear, and they have an emotional attachment to you. And because they have that emotional attachment and they've been through this journey, they're giving someone else a rational argument. Now, that giving someone a rational argument is not the best way to sell, because that doesn't tap into hope and fear, but that's the reason they're doing it. That's the reason you've activated word of mouth and you've got referrals and all the rest of it.
This is so good. We're just getting started, folks. The book, Story Business, Why Stories Rule the World and How They Can Reinvent Your Business, is the book, available Amazon, wherever books are sold. Absolutely outstanding. You need to dig into this, folks. I will tell you, he has tons of examples in this book that support everything that he's saying. But more so, it's going to make you really rethink about every presentation that you're doing. I really encourage you, whatever presentation you're making, right? It's just going to make you rethink it. It's so good. His name's Gavin McMahon. You're listening to him here on A New Direction. Hey, folks, Zoundy is one of my sponsors. Ultimate game changer for authors like myself and Gavin, and publishers and professionals who maybe have audiobooks or thinking about an audiobook. Here's the deal. I've got, my books are in different audio formats, but Zoundy is different than all of them. Here's why. When somebody downloads my book from Zoundy, I actually can get in contact with them and then get in contact with me, so that we could discuss what they liked about the book, what they didn't like about the book, what they'd like to see me write about in the future. It's so cool. It's been so beneficial to me. They give me a code. I've been able to give my audiobook away to talk to so many people. Absolutely outstanding. And listen, I've got a special code for you. If you would like to get your book through Zoundy, just go to zoundy.com/J. That's ZOUNDY.com/J. Use my code, JAY25. You'll unlock special savings. You're going to be so glad you did. And Linda Craft Team Realtors, listen, for 40 plus years, they've been helping people transition in life. And you say, well, they do real estate. How is that a life transition? Well, think about it. Every place you've ever lived, right, has been a transitional state in your life. Well, when it comes to the real estate aspect, they know how to take the stress out, right, and make the process smoother, right? They've been doing it for 40 years, helping thousands of people. They'd love to help you. Check them out, lindacraft.com, LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with Gavin McMahon, his book, Story Business, Why Stories Rule the World and How They Can Reinvent Your Business. And we just got started here. Gavin, I want to jump into the 6 rules of story business. Just real quickly, I don't want to dive into this too heavily, but these 6 rules are, and I'm just going to just shout them out for the people, and we'll just go through. My story has heroes and villains. My story has a spine. It's simple. It's evocative and provocative. Has vivid words and action, and frames how you see the world. So we're in business here. My story has heroes and villains. Help me.
Yeah, I think that's an easy one, actually. The first thing you need to remember is you're not the hero. The person you're speaking to is the hero. And they are always struggling with something. And the thing that you are selling them is the thing that hopefully will help them vanquish that villain. If you don't know that, then what you are doing is you're saying, look at me, here's all my features and functions, here's my product, here are my differentiators, look at me. And that is a very boring story because it's not about them. And, there was a piece of research done a while ago. I think it's been replicated over and over again. But basically, as a society, we're getting more and more vain. We're getting more and more egocentric. And so if you're not talking to people that care all about themselves, then they are not listening.
Mm. And by the way, you just pulled in the motive triangle again in that whole thing. You just did, right? Because you said, all right, the villain is the fear, and then I got to pull in the hope. You're the hero, right? We're going to give you some hope, right? I'm part of the solution, but you're going to be the hero in this story. All right, so next one, my story has a spine. What?
So I know we chatted earlier, and you're not a huge movie fan, or there's a certain types of movies that you like. Right. But if you think about TV shows, if you think about movies, if you think about books, there's an underlying structure to how things work. Books have chapters. There is a book that had just won an award. I think it was a Booker Prize or something, and it's basically one sentence, the whole book. There is no period in the thing. It's a very weird structure. I don't know what the book is called. I can't remember. I'd have to look it up. I'll provide you the answer later. But that would be a weird thing for you to do. We like structure. We need sentences. We need paragraphs. We need chapters. Same with movies. We need a beginning, a middle, and an end. We need scenes. Once you get that structure, you can start to play with it. Like, Tenet is a movie that has different directors will play with structure. But we need structure because we have this almost hidden expectation of how things are going to go. And if you break that structure and you do it in an unintentional way, you're just going to muddle your message. So you need the structure.
Beautiful.
That's the spine.
I love that. Okay, it's simple. I love what you did here, but it's okay. You say it's simple. Go ahead.
It's simple. It's too complicated.
Yeah, you just go, just enough detail, no more. That literally was his whole line in the whole thing. He said, it's simple, just enough detail, no more. That's literally all it said underneath that little subtitle, which I just thought was just so, because we complicate it, don't we?
There's if you go on the SpaceX website, or I think it's on X, formerly known as Twitter, there's a graphic that's going around, which is the evolution of the rocket engines. And the first one has got lots of tubes and pipes on it. The second one has fewer tubes and pipes. And the third one is a very clean, elegant looking design. And each one has got progressively more powerful. It's the same rocket engine that they use in the Falcon Heavy, and the Starship. But it's interesting because they, as an organization, have made the engine simpler. Most organizations do the exact opposite. If you look at that picture, you'd start with something fairly simple, and then it just gets more and more complicated. It's the same with stories. We like things that are simple, and we just have to keep pushing that particular noodle up a hill.
Okay. Is evocative and provocative?
Because you're speaking to people. I mean, clinical language will get you a snooze. So you need to somehow poke them, and you need to think about the language that you use that makes them sit up and pay attention. There's a reason that, for instance, the consult. Well, here's a good example. I think ChatGPT. I don't know who made the decision to name the thing ChatGPT, but it was one of the most brilliant pieces of marketing in the last 20 years because it explained exactly what it is and gave it a little bit of mystery at the end. It does exactly what it says on the tin, and GPT, I have no clue what that is, but it's interesting. So I think you're always looking for language that will make people sit up and pay attention. That's the evocative and provocative.
Has vivid words and actions.
Yeah. If I said to you, we're going to utilize project 529 to leverage some synergy and all the rest of it, the typical business speak, you're spending all your time thinking. And again, we want to get people moving. So vivid words and actions, again, going back to brain science, if I say the singer had a velvety voice, there's an alliteration to that, but the velvety voice, it's not just the centers of your brain that are processing language, but the centers of your brain that listen to sound are actually lighting up as well. So we want to use evocative language and vivid words and actions to get people to pay more attention.
Yeah, you say something that just one little sentence that says so much. It says, love words and use them creatively. I thought that just one little sentence said so much. Love words and use them creatively. That's a really concise way of putting it. I love that. Frames how you see the world.
Yeah. Well, that gets back to my definition of storytelling in story business. You've got to frame how people see the world, because if you've got a product, if you've got a project, if you want to move people in a certain direction, you have to get them on the same page, and framing is the way to do it. And framing, just as a little example for anyone that doesn't understand, I lived in Paris many moons ago, and I happened to be in France when the Olympics was on. And in the early stages of the Summer Olympics, it's all the events like sailing and archery and everything else. And the French were doing really well that year. And if you switched on French TV and you looked at the medal tables, and they ranked it by, how many golds won, the French were beating the USA, were beating the UK, were beating all these other countries. This is in the early stages. The American channels, so CNN and the American channels, when I switched over to them, they ranked theirs by total medals. And because of the volume, so framing is like, how am I presenting this information to make whatever I want look good?
That was a great brief explanation, but there's something else in this chapter here that you talk about. And I want you to stress the importance of ask questions, don't give answers. Help us understand that, because I think this is really critically important to business storytelling.
Well, so a couple of things. I think, in researching the book, I tried to pick up ideas from all sorts of different places. And one idea that is actually later in the book as well is Hemingway had this iceberg theory of writing. So you only give them just enough and no more, and then people's imagination fill in the rest. So I think there's a line in the book where I think I say stories are partial creatures. Because if you go to the movies and you see James Bond, you don't see James Bond get up, pick out his shoes and socks, tie his shoes and socks. You don't see all the boring stuff, but he's wearing shoes and socks, so he must have put them on. So you don't need to have everything. And the whole point is, how do you get people to fill in that kind of stuff? And I think that's part of what storytelling is you've got to get people engaged in that whole process.
There is power in questions, right? I mean, there's power in curiosity anyway, right? And so, but the big thing that you're alluding to here is, are you providing enough empty space for the person on the other side, or a group of people on the other side, to fill in the gaps? Which means that which means ultimately you have to be pretty clear, in what you have to be really intentional and clear about what you're doing here. Yeah. And not overdo it at the same time.
Yeah. Well, you want to get people engaged. And there's another piece that I picked up. This is a question for all the listeners now. So everyone listening should just think of the answer to this question. Here's the question. What is the capital of Brazil? Now, if you're actually, so your brain is now switched. You're thinking about what the capital of Brazil is. Some people will be thinking Rio de Janeiro. Some people will be thinking Sao Paulo. if you ask this question live in a room, people feel like they're being put on the spot because they want to answer the question. Your ego is now involved because you want to get the question right. And the actual answer to that question, which some people will have got, is Brasilia. Now, the point is, it doesn't really matter what it is, but the point is, how did you engage with that question? Because everyone that's listening that engaged in that question is putting themselves in that. They want to be right. Now, the interesting thing about the research around the power of questions is it's backwards to the way we teach. Because if you go back to school and you think about your school days, you were taught a class, you studied, chemistry or English or whatever it is you're studying. You did your whole semester, you did your school terms, and you go through the curriculum, and at the end there's an exam. We actually learn better by failing to answer questions. So if I ask you what the capital of Brazil is and you say Sao Paulo and you get it wrong, and then I tell you, no, it's Brasilia, you are far more likely to remember Brasilia because you've got the somatic marker in your head where you like, oh, I didn't get that right. Now I get it. Now I get it. That's why practice is such a great teacher, because it really is answering questions wrongly. And as long as you've got the feedback, it works really well as a teaching tool.
That's brilliant, by the way, because we're so embarrassed about being wrong. But if we could flip our mindset to going, by being wrong, I'm actually going to learn even more. Wow, that's a huge, Gavin, that's a huge mindset switch to go, I'm okay with being wrong because I'm going to learn even more. Instead of, but we emotionally get so attached to being wrong.
Right.
But yet it's our learning comes from being wrong.
Well, I'm going to use SpaceX as an example again. I talked about the rocket. If you ever watch, so it's probably one of the companies that's on the leading edge of innovation in its field. If you watch a launch, and they've had a string of spectacular failures, certainly with the big rocket that they're building, they have this term called a RUD. That was they launch the rocket, it goes up, and then it explodes. And the people that are commentating on the live streams work for SpaceX, and they'll talk about a RUD, and they get excited about a RUD. A RUD is a rapid, unscheduled disassembly. In other words, it exploded. But they're excited because they know they can learn from failure. And that's a really good example of a learning organization, one that gets excited about not the failure itself, but the learning that can come from the failure. And that's what questions do. We don't, as leaders, we do not use questions enough.
So good. I know we're gonna be, but let's do this. Let's take a break right here, and then we're gonna come back because we're gonna dig into some of the 6 genres of story business. So let's do this. The book is called Story Business: Why Stories Rule the World and How They Can Reinvent Your Business. Available bookstores everywhere. It's absolutely outstanding, fantastic book. You can just hear Gavin. I mean, he's brilliant, and you can hear the work that he's put into this. And if it's not, you're already getting great stuff, right? Already you are. And by the way, from all the people who are tuning in, thank you for doing that. I mean, wow, watching you live. You're listening to him here on A New Direction. Hey, folks, quick sponsors, real quick. Zoundy, Zoundy.com. I have my audiobook there. Other authors do too. Great for people who are in that audiobook space. Highly recommend them. I can be in touch with my people who've downloaded my book. I give my book away for free, and that way it gives me an opportunity to interact with them. So good. Check them out. Zoundy.com, ZOUNDY.com/J is the way to get a special savings. Use my code JAY25. That's JAY25. It's outstanding. You're gonna love it. Great platform. Linda Craft Team Realtors. Let me just say something. I'm biased. I admit it. Best real estate website on the planet. I'm just saying that, and here's why. Yes, they do have listings that you can look and view all the listings, et cetera, so forth. Here's where they go the extra level. They've hired a child psychologist to talk about moving with children. They got a veterinarian to write about how to move with pets. They've got an ongoing weekly podcast show that's also live called Real Estate Right Now. in studio people talking about really real estate matters that really matter to you, the consumer. Absolutely outstanding. Tons of information on the bleeding edge of AI and technology as well. Check them out, lindacraft.com, LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction. Story Business with Gavin McMahon is the book. Really encourage you to check it out because it's simply an outstanding read that's going to open your mind to the way of what you're doing in your business. Gavin,
by the way, can I say one thing, Jay?
Sure,
because I heard your commercial for Linda Craft Realtors. If you're a realtor and you're talking about how to move with pets and you're talking about how to move with children and all the stresses and strains of doing it, you are making your customer the hero of the story. That's why you love that website.
How about that? I never thought about it that way, but yeah, you're right. Yeah, I mean, I do like those little added little touches, about the children and everything. So thank you. That's great. You're right. Hope, fear, rationality. I just did it. We just did the whole motive triangle. Before we move into the 6 genres of story business, I've got a question to ask you. Do these necessarily have to follow in order, or can we jump around in there?
No, you can jump around. I mean, they make a logical sense to me, but I think one of the things that the reason that I talk about these 6 genres of storytelling is I think most business books that are around storytelling really are written for marketers, and I think that's very valid. Marketers are probably more natural storytellers in a business. But I think it's for everyone. And so with the 6 genres, I'm trying to go through how do you use stories, in different walks of business, as it were.
Okay. Which I felt that way as I read through each one of these genres, right? I mean, I would like to skip over the value storytelling, which I think is beautifully written, by the way. But I think for some of the people who sell products and services, I'd like to go to the product storytelling if we could, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Happy
so
to.
you come up with right out of the gate of product storytelling. And maybe what we should do here is have you talk about what are we trying to accomplish here in product storytelling?
So I think products, well, let me define it first. I think I talk about product storytelling as a science fiction, because I think there are different phases to building products. There's a phase when you don't even know what you're going to make. And so naturally it's science because you have to make it real, but it's definitely fiction because it doesn't even exist yet. I think product storytelling is science fiction even when you've made the thing, because you have to then to someone else, it's not their existing world. It's a new world that you want your product to be part of. I think the reason I talk about it that way is I think storytelling can, a lot of people talk about possibility thinking, and product organizations sometimes struggle with that because they go back and they look at what they did before, and whatever the next thing is just an incremental tweak on what they did before. That's perfectly valid, by the way. But I think product storytelling liberates you. And it also, I think what's misunderstood a lot is how I do think product and engineering, and maybe I'm biased because that's where I come from, is the beating heart of the business. You have to have stuff to sell, and they are the people that make the stuff. So, but I think product people, here's the typical gap that you get between product and sales. Product people are like, well, if only those salespeople understood what on earth we were making, they would be able to sell it a lot better than they do. And salespeople are like, well, if only those product people ever talk to a customer, they'd actually build something that customers want. And I think product storytelling begins to bridge that gap. I'll give you a classic example. Everyone pretty much has 5G on their phone. Most people don't even know what that means. If they know what the G stands for generation, maybe, and they think that, well, 5G must be better than 4G. And when 6G comes along, I'll have some of that because it's better. But you don't really know what it is or what it can do. Now, somewhere deep in the heart of Verizon or AT&T is an engineer that can actually explain what it is and why it matters and why it works. But that engineer pretty much didn't really explain it that well to a product person. And that product person didn't really explain it that well to a marketing person. And that marketing person didn't really explain it that well to us, which is why we just think 5G is better than 4G. So I think there's an element of storytelling that you have to have in building product to get people excited about what you're building, to get people to back what you're doing, all the rest of the things that you need to make products that people love, because that's what you want to do as a product person.
In each one of these, I just want to let the people know, when you look at or thinking about buying this book, he has 6 rules for whatever it is, value, product, sales. There's 6 rules that he has for each one of them. They're brilliant. I'm going to take just one rule of here of the 6 rules of product storytelling, because I just thought it just really popped out at me so much. People don't buy products; they buy better versions of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about that.
I wish I could take credit for that, and I forget right now who originally said that line, but it's something I came across in researching this book, but it struck me as absolutely true. And it gets back to the motive triangle, it gets back to the hero formula, some of the other things around storytelling. I think, if someone's I haven't got one, I would like one, but if someone's buying a Ferrari, what they're really doing is they're making a statement about themselves. If someone's buying any luxury good, that's really what they're doing, because they don't need that luxury good. There's a perfectly adequate Toyota version of that car that will get you from A to B. It's just you happen to buy a Ferrari. What does that mean? That means you've got plenty of money. It signals all sorts of things. So whatever you're buying, you will rationalize that purchase. I bought a new pair of shoes. I rationalize that purchase to my significant other, but I wouldn't buy it unless I thought I looked good in those shoes. I wouldn't, have the watch I have. I wouldn't wear the clothes I have if I didn't think somehow they made me look better. That equally applies to B2B purchases, by the way. I mean, if you're buying a cybersecurity suite because you're the CIO of the company you work for, you're buying a better version of yourself, because you're buying a product that makes you look smart, that makes you look like you're doing the right thing for the company, that makes you look like you're on the ball. There's all these emotional attachments to that product, and that's why that line, people don't buy products, they buy better versions of themselves, is so true. And this is where storytelling and product storytelling really get in, because if you're a product person and you think that from the beginning, you think about what is the better version of my customer that I'm trying to build, it makes you build an entirely different product.
Let's move to brand storytelling. What are we trying to accomplish in brand storytelling?
Brand storytelling, I think I'm on a bit of a mission with that one, because I talk about brand storytelling as world building, and I don't believe there are any companies that pretty much deliberately set out to do this. But I think if you look at companies that you would say are great brands, Disney, Apple, Tesla, I think they all take part in world building. So we have to know what world building is. And if you're a science fiction fan, you probably know. If you're not, you might not. But world building is essentially, how do I create an arena? How do I create a world that you love? So if you think about Star Trek, or if you think about Harry Potter, or if you think about Star Wars, they're all very distinct worlds. Like you might not, you could be blindfolded and ushered into a movie theater, and you would know pretty quickly whether you're watching Star Wars, Star Trek, or Harry Potter.
Absolutely.
Because they're all distinctive. Now, all of those worlds are complex, but they all make narrative sense. The products, the characters in the world all fit that world. So in Star Wars, you have hyperspace and you have the Force. In Star Trek, you have, warp drive, and you have phasers and photon torpedoes. They're
Dilithium
all,
crystals. Come on, man. You forgot the
yeah,
dilithium crystals.
you have all these things, but you know where you are. But
Right.
think about brands. Mostly, you could be in a hotel and you have no clue what, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you wake up, you have no clue where you are, what hotel it is, what city it is, because there's nothing really that distinctive. And I pick up this term, the blandscape, which is where most product categories don't escape the blandscape. They are part of this kind of universal brown that is, that's what that category is like. There was a Super Bowl advert a few years ago that David Harbour did, which was for Tide, and the Super Bowl ad was basically him driving a fancy car down a scenic highway. You think it's a car ad? No. You see him in a bar with a bunch of friends laughing. You think it's a beer ad? No. But so you've got all these signals of what the brand are. But I mean, the clever thing about that one was no, it's a Tide ad, because it doesn't matter what brand you're in, they've always got clean clothes. But I digress. But the world, you have to create a world, and it has to connect together. I think when companies create a world that's a veneer, they don't create fandom. And you really want fandom. You want like how you think about products, how you think about creating value for the street, how you think about talking to customers, how sales, all the moving parts of your business have to have a logical connection and a through line all the way through. And if you have that, you have people that want to be part of that world. That's why, Apple can have a new release, especially in the Steve Jobs era, but even now, Apple can have a new release and have a bunch of Apple fanboys and fan ladies who just queue up around the corner to get whatever the new thing is, because they've bought into the world. Same reason people go to Comic-Con and dress up like whatever they dress up, because they are avid fans of that world. And I think every brand can take a lesson from that if they want to get into this idea of world building, rather than just, here's my brand, make sure it's blue, make sure it's always in this font, the stuff that they typically do.
We talk about differentiation so frequently in business, right? We got to differentiate ourselves. But you're talking about differentiating ourselves through our story. And you're talking about differentiating ourselves in terms of fandom, or in terms of creating a world that people want to be a part of. And that's, I think we all want that. I think getting there is a struggle for us sometimes. Do you have any sort of quick thing to give us a little push or nudge on the way to getting there?
Well, I there is no quick answer, I don't think. I think it's part of the DNA of a company. One of the examples I use in the book is IKEA, which I think is a great example of world building, literally, figuratively. But if you've been to IKEA, you're kind of wandering through this maze of stuff, and you've got these little pods that are like little pieces of the world made of IKEA furniture, and you can imagine that IKEA furniture in your house, or all the rest of it. But it all connects. This is the important thing about world building. Everything connects. So the names of the furniture are, they're Swedish sounding to most English speakers. They're unpronounceable, but they fit. Like, I've got very Swedish looking design. I've got Swedish names. I've got meatballs at the restaurant at the top that are Swedish meatballs. Everything's kind of blue and yellow. Everything connects. It's all connected, and it's not a brand veneer. It's a world that they build. There's a cause and effect. I believe, as a company, my purpose is about bringing, good living and a good standard of living to the everyday people. That's a version of the translation of the original founder of IKEA, Ingvar Kamprad. And he wrote a book, actually, which every IKEA employee reads. It's called The Testament of the Furniture Dealer. It's a little bit like a show Bible that tells you this is what IKEA is all about. This is our purpose. But all of that stuff connects. So if I believe as a purpose that I want to bring, good furniture and good design to everyone, and I do that through flat pack, then the cause and effect of flat pack furniture is that it must be simple and it must be elegantly designed, and there's a cause and effect on price, and there's all these cause and effects, and so world building, that's, I think, the next generation, the next level of marketing. And I think that's very different from a siloed view of like, we've built this thing here, Mr. Marketer or Mrs. Marketer, can you like make a campaign around this? Can you sell this to people? Because they're just catching a a sow's ear and asked to make a silk purse out of it. So I think world building is this through line that goes all the way through.
We've done an hour. It has gone so terribly fast. And I would love to have you just keep going and going and going. But thank you. This has been so educational, so fun. A lot of people literally have tuned in, watching throughout the course. And so tell people how they can get a hold of you if they want to get more information. Maybe they want to hire you. Maybe they want to hire you to come in and go, you know what, Gavin? We don't even know what our story is, and we need somebody to help us kind of discover it. And they could bring you in. How did they get a hold of you to do that?
Sure. Well, you can find me on LinkedIn, Gavin McMahon, Fast Forward. There's not that many Gavin McMahons on LinkedIn. Our website is fastforward.com, FASS forward.com. If you're interested in the book, it's on Amazon and pretty much all places books are sold. And I wrote this book really as a way to get all these ideas straight in my head first. But what I'm loving now is when people come back to me and say, oh, I saw this, and then that kicked off this idea that I had that did this. So I always love a conversation with people that are trying to practice this stuff.
I will have the link to Fast Forward in the write-up for the show with picture and Gavin's LinkedIn, so you can click on that when you see that come out. Gavin, stay with me. Thank you again so much, folks. This is the show. You know what I say to you every week: you're in control of three things: your attitude, your effort, and your resiliency. Life doesn't give us what we want. Oftentimes, circumstances happen without us knowing why. But you know what you're in control of is your attitude. Take control of that. It's not always easy, but you can. Second is your effort. You can control that. You may not have as much as you had in the tank today as you did yesterday, but your effort's tied to your excellence. So how excellent will you be today? And then third, you're in control of your resiliency. We all get punched in the gut, punched in the mouth, get knocked down. It's up to us to get back up again. And we need you to get back up. Why? Because you're worth it, and we need you on the team. I'm going to be back next week with another great guest, another great books, another great show. I thank you so much. You had a lot of choices. You chose us. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Wherever you're listening to the show, give us a 5-star review and tell your friends. We are so grateful for everything that you do by tuning in and your feedback towards us. As I say to you all over the world, you know what that is. Ciao, everybody.